for Water Park Montessori, and we are lucky to be one of the partners for this project. And I'll be joining for two of the methodologies, and today's is the SEDIN project that we had. I am joined today by Alexandra Zarosa, wave Alexandra, and my colleague who will join us in Florence is Christina. She had other arrangements already today, so she can't join us for this webinar, but you will be meeting her in Florence. So I'm very happy to be able to present the project today. I also have been kicked under the table by Alexandra to remember to speak slowly, because when I get enthusiastic, I start to speak very quickly. So I will do my best. But again, if there are any questions as we are going, please, put a question in the chat or stop me and ask for clarification. And I will oblige to the best of my ability. So I'm just going to start the project presentation. Here we go. This is the presentation that is in the shared resources, so you can look at it again if there's anything you are wondering about. But the SEDIN project began in 2018, and it was creative methods for social inclusion in multicultural schools. And we were a group of partners, and I won't go through all of them. You will probably be, there's action at the top there as the coordinator, and there are other partners that you're going to recognize in other, I won't spend a lot of time, but we were the partners for this project. The project itself was based on creative methodologies, and the two that we used to offer the methodologies, one was creative learning and the other was the Montessori method. And creative learning is based on, as you can see, drama and now I've just lost the word in English, improvisation for learning. And as you can see, they're becoming, I'm guessing here that they are either, tigers or scary monsters of some sort to be to increase learning. So one of the things that was at the core of what we wanted to do was social inclusion, and also for being able to support multicultural schools and through creative learning, through improvisation, through drama. Through this active learning, you can include all your students to some degree, and that is what we were wanting to show. But also, you can accommodate for different languages. You can include cultures in a variety of ways, and support with language. So in these creative methods, you are able to scaffold, we call it, for different learning challenges, whether it for many reasons, that we have many different challenges that we are needing to work with in the classroom. So creative learning was one of the methodologies, and the other was the Montessori method. Widespread international methodology, and you can see a classroom. You see one classroom and you see them all. You can go around the world and the classrooms will look very similar, no matter which Montessori classroom you're in. We have many of the same materials and things that you will find around the world. And as we set off in this project, for me, it was very exciting to see how we could blend the Montessori method, which uses quite a bit of drama, with the creative learning method that is very focused on drama and activity in learning. So this was the foundation of this project. Again, the goals of the project were top of the list: social inclusion. This was one of the very important things when we had, as I said, this started in 2018, and many countries were struggling with the challenge of incorporating refugee and migrant and minority children into the classroom in a way that was inclusive, in a way that lifted everyone together and brought the group closer together for inclusion. So this was a big focus for our project. We also wanted to be able to help and accommodate for cooperation and collaboration in the classroom. And of course, if you're sitting at your own desk, looking forward at the teacher, or in small groups, then it's very hard to get a higher level of cooperation and collaboration. So with these methodologies, with these drama activities, for example, there's so much collaboration and you have to work with each other to get these projects, or to be able to improvise together or to express yourself creatively through, for example, through drama. And also it is a main principle in the Montessori classroom as well, where we don't have the typical desk setup structure. It is freely moving around, and there's a high level of cooperation and collaboration in the 6 to 12 years classroom, where the social and the moral focus of the group is one of the biggest things in focus for this age group. So this was already part of the methodology. So to be able to bring that into the SEDIN project was an important aspect as well. Improving the classroom environment. This, of course, I've already mentioned that if we can increase inclusion and we can give positive classroom and experiences, but also to create a safe and welcoming positive classroom environment, then we can improve student learning. And when they are in place and at home in the classroom and they feel safe and a positive environment, that's when they can sort of sink their shoulders and begin to learn the classic knowledge learning. But before, if any child is struggling with inclusion or any emotional issues, their head's not in the right space to be able to take in what we call the traditional learning. So this obviously will increase the acquisition of knowledge when we have created a classroom space that children feel at home, they feel welcome, they feel that they are contributing, and not least that they are actively involved in their learning in a positive classroom environment. Then they're ready to be able to take in information in a better way. And also by using these activities with movement and alternate, a lot of focus on the hands-on experiences with learning, the mind takes in information better because we're experiencing it with our whole body. We become part of the learning experience instead of just having someone talk the information to us. We're actively being part of the experience, and therefore it sits longer, it sits in our memories longer. We take ownership of the learning in this way. So these were the 4 main goals. There were others, but these are the main ones, goals of the project. And by using these 2 methodologies, we were able to provide activities and guides for teachers of these ideas. Look forward to Florence, because it's going to be so much fun. This is a picture from all of us in Dublin in 2019 when we were doing a teacher training like we will be doing in Florence, although it was a slightly shorter training. We'll be there in Florence for a week, and it's lots of fun, and the enthusiasm from all of you who come, it's amazing. So I'm so looking forward to meeting everyone and to having a great week, an inspiring week of ideas and exchange of inspiration. This was in Lesbos at the final meeting, which I got snowed in for. So my colleague Nicole had to take my place. She was able to get out of the country. I was not. I think that's what happens when you live in one of the northern countries. Okay, so this is a little bit of a fuzzy picture, but I think it was really important to show teacher responses and how SEDIN project methodologies helped in the classroom from practitioners. So language barriers, valuing cultural diversity, pupil engagement, look at that 86% mentioned that it was increased pupil engagement, which is really important. The more safe they feel, the more engaged students will be, I think. Involving parents, pupil behavior. I found that one very interesting and right in line with my own research and observation in Montessori classrooms as well, that yes, there are children with behavior problems. That's never going to end. However, if you can captivate them with meaningful activity, that they have an inner motivation, they want to participate, then the behavior seems to not be as big of an issue because they are their mind's now focused on the task at hand. They want to participate. They're not reacting and resisting maybe a traditional teaching setting or a learning setting. So that I think was really interesting. And then of course, the last point of the integration of migrant children, that to me, that doubly warms my heart when I see that they are being better able, they felt more integrated. The teachers maybe felt that they were able to integrate them better into the classroom activities as well, being able to use different ways to include the children. So very good results there. So some core Montessori principles here. The first one is that the Montessori approach is a life philosophy. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but when Maria Montessori originally started writing about her methodology, she did not call it the Montessori method. She did not want it called her name at all because she understood that this was not just something that only she came up with. She writes about this in one place. It was not just the work of one person. This is many ideas from many people put together into one approach. And also it was based on her observation over many years working with children, hands-on with the children and scientifically observing them. So when we talk about Montessori, it sometimes gets misunderstood as some strange little cult-like or religious aspect to it, but really it is pulling together of many different ideas into a philosophy. And it is not just a methodology for a child's classroom. There are many parts of the philosophy that apply to people of all ages. So it has to do with the way humans are. She also went a lot into anthropology. So how we learn as human beings, the physical learning, structure of our brains, and how, for example, hands-on learning works. But also, she speaks a lot and writes so much about the spirit, what she called the spiritual preparation of the teacher. And she didn't mean in a religious sense, but what she meant was that self-reflecting and self-observation that we should have in how we approach, for example, in a classroom, rather than being the one that needs all the, all the attention and I come in and do my thing and I expect children to watch me, but it's really, we're changing the role of the teacher. And I'll get to that in a minute. There are so many things that she writes about also on peace education. This is really just as relevant today as it was 100 years ago when she was writing and fighting for it. She worked with the White Cross, which she was working with displaced children after the First World War. And her philosophy is, and she writes it in her book, Education and Peace, that education, wars is the work of is the job of politicians to fix. But the way we approach the children with the respect and the inclusion, that's where we can start bringing world peace more and more into our society, because they're growing up with that understanding of social inclusion and collaboration and respect for each other. So I think I just gave myself some goosebumps there, but that's what we mean as it being a life philosophy. The prepared environment, this is a key. One of the first things that we talk about is because in order for all of these things to happen, we need a structure that is prepared for the children to be able to choose these hands-on materials, for them to be able to collaborate without interrupting someone else. So there's a lot that goes into preparing the physical environment of a Montessori classroom, as well as the routines and things that we have that are structures that allow us to have a freedom in the classroom. There's so many things that you can read. It is a well-known methodologies, and there's many sources that you can read more about this. But the prepared environment is one of those. It is a structure that allows us to have the freedom of that the children have to move around and make their own choices about what they want to work with. And that is very different from a traditional classroom where the teacher tells us, the whole group, this is what we're going to work with now. I mentioned the role of the adult. And again, here, this is very different from the traditional classroom because we are no longer the main source of information. We are not the teacher anymore. We are just a guide. And that tends to be one of the most difficult things for traditional teachers. I speak for myself as well. I've been there. To change our attitudes, because we are so used to being the one that has to be in full control. We're the one with the information. We need to make sure that the children are doing what we think they should be doing. But now we're going to switch that around in the Montessori classroom. We are there to guide. So in the learning process, there are three main stages. The first one is what we call the exposure stage. And that is when we present something to the children. And when you are, our role as an adult, that is to tell inspiring stories. We're going to get to that. That's one of our big things, is the drama in the stories. And these lessons that are just showing very objective lessons to inspire the children to start to learn. Then we move over into the experience phase, which is where the children are then working with the materials, working with the concepts that we have presented in the exposure phase. They're out finding information, they're doing experiments, they're researching things. There's a very big and expansive possibilities for what they can be doing in that stage. You have to have a prepared environment for that to happen. Otherwise, it can be chaos, and we don't want chaos. And also, our role as the adult, we are the ones who are inspiring in the first stage, but during the experience stage, in that second stage of exploration and curiosity, we are only there guiding. So we are guiding their experiences, we are guiding their curiosity, but we are not front and center and leading it. And then we have the final stage of learning, which is the creative expression, where they can then come out with a project or with some sort of a poster that they showcase their learning. They can teach, they can tell about their learning in that third stage. In order for this to happen, we need concentration. So this is why in a Montessori classroom, we have what we call the work cycle of a minimum 3-hour period of uninterrupted work time. So we don't have classes, changing every 45 presentations that happen throughout that work cycle. But it is possible for a child to choose to work on a project and sit there and work on it for 3 hours uninterrupted. And this is such a powerful tool, really. And I often ask adult learners as well, if we were doing a big project and we got interrupted every 45 minutes to do something else, and we had to put away what we were working on, I don't think we would be very happy as adults. So why would we do that to our children? the work cycle allows them to choose and get deeper and deeper into, in full concentration, to be able to, you know, that feeling of satisfaction when they finish something. They've been able to go from the very first idea and work all the way through until they felt that they were completed with it. So this is really, really important. Concentration has many, many other levels as well, but this is not this is not a 2-year course on Montessori method. Independent learning, of course, within that prepared environment, within those structures, and work independently, whether it's in groups or on their own, and they are able to then choose what they want to work with and continue along certain paths. Of course, the adult is there, guiding, structuring, adding more lessons, scaffolding where it's needed, but we want the children to understand that my choice is valid, and now I want to be working on this. I'm going to focus on this area. Maybe I'm really interested in different leaf shapes, and I am allowed to work on that for a while, right? So I can choose these things. At the same time, the guides, the adults, the teachers, they're giving small lessons to make sure that the children have, you know, the instruction that they need to continue going, and that they won't miss. We're not afraid that they'll miss half of their education because they chose something else. I also mentioned the social and moral development during this time, the 6 to 12-year age. Social and moral development is front of mind. They're developing the sense of right from. That's not fair, you know, everything is very fair, black and white. That's how the younger ones are beginning to develop it. But then as they get older, into the 9 to 12-year-olds, they're more developing the gray zones. You know, they see the nuance in right from wrong, and sometimes something can be right, other times it's wrong, and so on. But the group, the social group, is so important. So this one, I think, was really relevant for the SEDIN project when we were working with collaboration and group work and communication in the social group as well. Oops. Okay, so curiosity and wonder. This is something that we can do at all times, and both the drama, the creative learning, and the Montessori method have this, I think, at the core of what we're. The picture that you see here is a story that we tell at the beginning of every school year, from first grade and up to 7th grade. It's the story of the coming of the universe. And it's a really exciting story, and it's, you know, it's one of those inspiring stories, and you have to, you really have to know how to get that drama into these stories. And we're going to be doing several stories with you for the SEDIN project in Florence. So look forward to that if you've signed up for this one, for this methodology. What we want to inspire are these curiosity questions, these big questions that will nurture a curious mind and allow them to create their own understanding and build an understanding of the world around them. So when we tell these stories, there's a lot of information that we sort of hint at, but we don't give complete ideas or answers and just list facts. So we leave them wondering. We want them to start thinking, yeah, I wonder why, or how come it, you know? So the things that we're doing are nurturing that exposure that I talked about, that first stage of learning. It's to city questions and to start them wondering, because if they are sitting with a question, that triggers the inner motivation. They then want to go learn more. They want to go and find out things. Instead of me saying, today we're going to learn about fill in the blank, you know, stars. So what? I wasn't interested in stars, but I am interested in the orbit of the planets or whatever, right? So we want them to sit with questions and wonder about things that they can then continue on to look further into and to research. Interest, which means they will continue to be motivated to learn. And that is where that independent learning comes in here. So this is one of those wonderful dramatic stories that were a version of it. As you can tell, there's a lot of stuff that has to be brought with it, but we'll do our best. Cosmic education is really our curriculum for 6 to 12 in the Montessori. We're looking at everything in our cosmos. Everything in the universe is fair game for learning, as an avenue of, I want to research something. And what Montessori talked about is that there's an interdependency within actions affect other things. I am dependent on the sun just as plants are dependent on the sun. We are dependent on each other as far as the social goes. Humans are dependent on each other and so on. So we're looking at how everything is interconnected in the universe. And that's why we tell these big stories, is because we're giving a large umbrella for which they can then connect. It gives a reference point for all the information. Because Montessori says that giving just facts, random facts here and there, that causes confusion. But giving information in context with these stories and giving them places to relate their information to, that creates understanding. So here we have the great lessons. We tell these lessons every school year, and we change them up a bit so that the ones who have maybe heard it 4 or 5 times, they don't get bored of them. But it's almost like they're going back, to revisit a friend. Oh, I remember this story. And sometimes they want to help out, and they often come with good questions during, and it's really fun to watch how they react the older they get. And the more times they've seen these stories or heard these stories, the more they show an interest or an ownership of them almost. So like I said, the first story is the story of the universe. And that sets the stage from, the Big Bang all the way up until the universe starts to form and things happen. There's a star in one of the galaxies, and that's the sun. And the sun, then we have particles from the sun. That is the Earth. And the Earth cools down and everything settles. And we end the story with the fact that things are settling down on Earth, and very soon it will be just prepared for something else to happen. And we sort of leave off at that sort of cliffhanger that something's coming. Yeah. So then the next story, and this can be done in a few weeks or it depends on how you want to organize it. We then start off with this coming of life. So we've ended the last story with something's ready to happen on Earth. And we start then with the development of life on Earth, all the way from the single-celled little organisms, all the way up until a new creature arrives at the very end, this little red strip of time, very short comparatively to the rest of the development of life. And that new special being, everything is ready for that special being to arrive. And of course, that's the humans. And that's where we leave off on that second story. The third story starts with the coming of humans. And so we start with the very early humans, and we talk about the development of human beings all the way up to when we get into, for example, small groups. And so we talk about the Stone Age and up until civilizations. And so we talk about the development of human beings. And then there's two, once we've arrived with the stories there at the end. And one is the story of writing or written communication. Writing, letters, this is not something we are born with an innate understanding of. This is actually a human invention, and it's an amazing invention. And it's very interesting because often teachers will get very stressed that their children haven't learned to read and write yet. And the point is, well, this is something that we actually need to learn because we don't understand it intuitively. So this is really exciting to go through the history of written communication. And then we have as well, you can do these parallel. We have the story of number, which is very exciting to see how we used to, the different systems of calculating things and different number bases, and so much fun. So these are the 5 great stories, and everything else that we do in the classroom for the full year, that can get related back to one of these 5 stories. And it's really exciting to see. We've now set a full umbrella that can give context for all the learning we do the rest of the school year. It will now relate in sequence in a holistic way. So it's not scattered facts that aren't relevant to something else. We have a context that we. This is in Norwegian, my apologies, but I will do my best to try and translate a little bit. This is from, in Norway, we're one of the few countries that actually has a Montessori curriculum approved by the government. So here we have the first story, which is the coming of the universe. And this is all about the universe and the powers in the universe and the way, solid, liquid, and gas, and all of the geology. And then out from there, we have the development of life. So everything within zoology and botany happens through here. Then we have the story of human beings, and that brings us out into all of the culture that we have, some social studies. And then we have the 2 number story and the story of written communication, which of course goes into all language work and all of literacy. And of course, this one goes into all mathematics that we do. So this is showing that everything that we have in our curriculum can be related to these 5 stories. Whoops. I have to add this quotation, and I always add many, many, but this is one. It is not always easy to present the whole as it is to present a detail. Then it does not suffice for the teacher to limit herself to loving and understanding the child. She must first love and understand the universe. So when we are working with children, and when we are working with making the drama and the storytelling and inspiring the children when it comes to, for example, looking at the everything that we find, and we can make it dramatic, and we can involve them in these activities that are hands-on activities that inspire them to work together, to research, to listen to different opinions on things, can you imagine? Or to hear different cultural representations of things. We're looking at the whole universe. And it's not as easy to present that whole as it is to just present one detail. But when we first have a love and understanding of the universe, we are then able to present it further and to ignite that curiosity and that love of the universe in the children that we're working with. So when we are looking at the activities for this project now, when we get into Florence, we're going to look at how we can use drama and storytelling and active activities, active hands-on materials and interactions to get into this wholeness, this learning that relates to many other things, and also has an element of collaboration, cooperation, and inclusion, that everyone can take part. And that's one of the beauties with drama. You can get, all children can have a role. And sometimes when we think about theater or putting on, plays or performances, not everyone is, well, many of them want to have the main role, but not everyone wants to. But there are some who prefer that they want to, to be a stagehand. They want to have a background role of things, but you're able to incorporate every child according to their strengths and their desire to be along in the project. But to their abilities, so that they don't feel that they are always left out or they can't participate because I don't speak the language well enough to have the main role, and so on. So there's many things that we can do for this inclusion to get everyone involved, to make sure that everyone is along in the learning process according to their interests and also on their level. I think that was the end of it. Was indeed. Okay. So let me just get my menu back here, and I'm going to stop sharing. All right, got all sorts of windows here. Are there any questions so far? I know that was a lot, and again, a 20-minute introduction into the Montessori and creative learning methods are it may be a little bit challenging to take in. Of course, I represented the Montessori method, so I know, and I'm much more capable to talk about the Montessori method, but with the drama, we're going to be doing activities there. And also there are other methodologies that are using the drama as well. And so you'll get a good idea of how to incorporate this and get some ideas of how we can take traditional lessons and change them around so that we can do it in a more active and inclusive way. No questions? That's either a good sign or a bad sign. That either means that I was very clear or that everyone's just sitting there wondering what I'm talking about. I hope it's the first. One activity that we did do that I would love to try and I'm looking here to see where I can, the whiteboard, there we go. Okay, so one of the activities we did in the SEDIN project, which was really fun. And I also did it via Zoom last time I did this presentation for the partners. And that is to look at different topics from interconnected, intercurricular way. So when we're working in this holistic way, we don't want to just present a thing and look at it from one aspect or from one direction. We want to work on projects, and I'm sure all of us have heard about project-based learning or inquiry-based learning. And these are the things that we want to focus on, because through these projects, we're seeing how it relates to all the other topics, and we see how it relates to also our own reality. So oftentimes children will choose projects after they've had that curiosity question. They create a project, and there are ways to then, for us to scaffold, you know what I mean by scaffold, to build and help structure it so that with different aspects as well. So we can give a more well-rounded view of something. And in the, we have a saying that anything can be an inspiring project. Any topic, you name it, we'll find it. We can make it work, you know. And in the SEDIN training in Dublin, we did this with the topic of potato, because, well, we were in Ireland, so of course we're going to go with a potato. But then when we did it later, and some of the partners from Greece, for example, have done it with an apple, which I thought was brilliant. So I thought we could do that again today. And last time what I did, I will attempt to do the same today. I'm going to share the whiteboard. And let's hope this works. And let's see, use classic whiteboard. Yeah. Oops, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and grab this, and I'm going to write apple in the beginning. And then what we can do, and I'm wondering, does everyone, of course I can't see anyone now that I've shared this, but does everyone have access to the whiteboard? Can everyone jump in, and are you able to use it? Otherwise we'll just, everyone can turn, hey, I've got someone else in there, that's great. So if you want to, you can just use the drawing tool. And so I'm going to write a nice, well, not a nice big circle, but okay, I put a circle around it. And let's start getting some topics coming out of here. So if everyone who can jumps in, there's a text on the toolbar, there's a text and as well as a drawing. So you can just use the pen to draw. And then, for example, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to write technology, as that's front of mind for me at the moment. And I'm just going to check. I'm going to use my pen. I'm going to do this. And we're just going to make a big brain map of all the different topics that we can do. So for example, let's get here. I'm going to put science and I'm going to put history. Let's see, just grabbing my things here. And then anyone who, oh, we doubled over, that's great. We can put all the topics that we know are in the curricula because like, that's what we're, mathematics, which of course can come over here. Oh, I love some of these ideas that are coming, you know, shape for a circle instead of free drawing. Well done. All right, seasons. What happens to an apple tree? What else we have? Knowledge. Oh, like the apple of knowledge. That's good. Fruit, trees, colors, fertility, the references to religion, and for example, the Bible. We have the apple showing up a few times there. Mathematics, technology, gravity. Of course, we've got wonderful Sir Newton. Whether that's real or not, we'll see. What else? What other kind of subject areas do we have? For example, literacy. And I think a lot of these ideas here have been connected to literacy as well. Let's see, mythology, great. There's loads of mythology with the apple, of course. Other topics, let's see, we've got how much geography in here? Oops. I obviously am not very good with mouse drawing here. Apples in different cultures, great. Oh, I see an Icelandic mythology about the apple. I'm gonna have to ask about that one later. This looks interesting. Let's see. Art, excellent. Food, of course. When you say art, I know exactly which painting I'm thinking of. with the apple in front of someone's face, maybe.
All of my creativity decreased in the moment somebody said food. Now I'm done. I forgot apple is a
And it's
food.
that time
Like
of day.
now it's apple pie.
Well, you know, it's that season as well. So I just went apple picking with my kids yesterday. So I've got so many apples that I've been baking. So food is very front of mind for me as well. Strudel and oh yes. Apple juice and applesauce and everything apple. All right, let's come off of mathematics. How can we get apples into mathematics? It's like the typical one of you know, I have this many apples and this many oranges. How many pieces of fruit do I have? You know, like in word problems, fractions. There we go. Great. Cutting up apple slices. How many do we have there? Fairy tales. That's great. Snow White, for example. That's the first one that pops into mind. Stories with apples. Let's see. What else are we getting in there? How about other ideas for literacy? We've got algebra coming off there. Weight in mathematics, great. And when it comes to science, we have things like the classification, the varieties, species of apples. Did you know that apples are related to roses in the classification tree? They come straight out of the rose family, actually, and they're coming out. One for children to actually discover on their own when we're working with classification of plant kingdoms.
No, it's
Symmetry.
probably not real chemistry, but they could be different state, like they could be in liquid or they could be in hard status, right?
Absolutely. And we have I'm not sure that we would have gaseous apples.
No,
I
no,
don't
not
know
the,
about that, but at least we do have liquid and solid. But but what happens when an apple rots? We have a whole kingdom of fungus, for example, and how important are fungi for the rest? You know, as part of this interdependency, why do we need fungus? Why were they an important thing that came out of the water on land during the story of the coming of life? Because they help us. What if we didn't have anything to break down all of the waste, for example? So this is really important to get to understand that interdependency of everything has a role in this wonderful thing that we call universe and life. Any more suggestions here? Physical education, how about that? That's another topic. Don't forget that we can get apples in there. Obviously, we can talk about nutrition when it comes to an apple. But also, is there anything that we would do with physical education? How, you know, language, apples in many different languages, you know, this is how I say apple in my language. How do you say apple? And then we start getting into etymology, word roots, language families. It can go on forever. So we
also in
the way
art.
we use in art, did you say?
In
Yeah,
art, yeah,
absolutely.
art, yeah. Apples in art, different
Yes,
apples in different
good.
arts. Yeah. I can't draw for some reason.
Exactly. And not just and seeing how, for example, in still lifes, how artists have used apples throughout art history. That's a great way to compare it. How has the apple been used in modern art compared to classical art and so on? So you're able to use it to compare how human beings have thought about this object. This apple is just a simple thing, yeah? And the other thing we can think about is in language, I kind of just lost it. Not just the words and yeah, I'll think about it again. Oh, idioms, yeah, expressions, right? How we use apples in our expressions to, you know, to express different ideas. Doesn't necessarily mean we're hung up on apples, but that it does, you know, what does it mean to be the apple of someone's eye, for example? That's really interesting. I never really thought about that. Why would I be an apple in someone's eye? That's a very strange English expression. I'm going to have to go research that, right? And these are the things that we do with children to get them to think that, I don't know. I want to go find out. So now I have a question, and now I'm motivated to go learn more. I'm motivated to go find out things. So I think I'll close this window now unless someone is dying to add more. We've got, actually, before we do that, I'm going to just take a quick screenshot so I have that for later. All right. But what's really interesting then is that we can come back to something like this and we can look at, you know, how can we do projects on it? What can I research? What do I want to find out more about? Often when we do something like this, or we have a story about the universe, there's so much within that we might have 20 children that we tell this story to, and there will be 20 different topics being researched because something we wonder about when we hear the story. We might have just been doing something in our free time, so we relate to the story differently, or it triggers a memory or a question related to something we were just doing. So meeting the child where they are in their interest and allowing them to follow their inner curiosity is how we're going to inspire lifelong learning. It doesn't end when we leave school. We continue to want to find out. Just look at any adult who has a question. What's the first thing we do? We either Google it Or we say, hey Siri. We use ways we go straight to find out the answer because we're curious beings. We want to know. We want to find out the answer. And we're not satisfied until we have learned something new. And this is exactly what we want to do. We want to inspire their desire to learn, because we're all born with that desire to learn and find out and explore, but also how we can do it in creative ways. How can we use an activity around a fairy tale, and we can act it out and become these different characters from the fairy tale? And how does that help us to learn a new area that maybe the moral of this fairy tale, for example, or how can we bring that in and compare it to the way we think today, and so on. So everything is connected in a very interesting and inspiring way. And if we can get that spark, then we're able to really win the trust of our students as well. If I can inspire you and I can get you excited about learning, then the next time I have a lesson, for example, it's less likely that they say, oh, I don't want to go, I'm bored, I don't want to. They're like, oh, wow, what's Sarah going to tell me next? You know, so you really can inspire that curiosity and that excitement about learning, compared to the I hate school, which I hope no one ever has to hear, because of the way that we're presenting things, and also including the children in their learning. I could go on forever, but I don't want to just be rambling. So if there's any questions or any comments or ideas, you can shoot them into the chat here. And we can take some questions. But again, when we get to Florence, I will have a gigantic suitcase along with me, full of all sorts of fun stuff. So we're going to be playing a whole lot. You're going to forget that you're learning about parts of a cell, because we're going to become the parts of the cell, or we're going to have a fun being planets, dancing the dance of the planets, and so on. So we're going to be actively involved in learning. Afterwards, you might realize, oh, wow, I learned something today, but it's going to feel like you're playing, and the social interaction with the group, the way you're having fun, the way we can include everyone in these activities, that's really the key learning experience that we want to give from the SEDIN project, is the way we can use these creative methods as tools for social inclusion and for improved learning, because we are enjoying it and it appeals to our inner motivation and our inner desire to learn more. All right, no more questions. So Kostas, I guess I get to give it back to you. Thank you, everyone, and see you soon.